by, and he's backed by popular demand, and his colored pencils, it just makes it amazing because it looks like a real piece of art. It looks so realistic, all of his paintings. And in his life, he was a chemist, career,
Wastewater chemist.
before devoting himself to colored pencils. So he's done delightful work, as you can see right here. So he's going to give you a demo on how he uses his colored pencils.
Yeah, I started my career here in Oregon City, down there where the McDonald's and take the test up at Clackamas Community College. And there was a big long line. I couldn't believe it. They filled up the McLaughlin auditorium, and it turned out there were 132 people.
Oh.
And as luck would turn out, I was struck by lightning, and I think I got 98%. And I've been a military policeman in a former career, drug out of grad school, which was a nice break. But because I was a veteran, I got FIPE, which gave me 100. And that was the highest score you could get. Anyway, I got the job, and it was very interesting. Wastewater, when I first heard about it, harkened back to Jackie Gleason and Norton, who was out there stirring the stream as it came in. That was wastewater. I was in charge of a laboratory. A laboratory is the eyes and ears of the plant. However, I learned later it was not the tongue. Taste is not involved. So we run tests and determine different parameters, and this is what my forte is. I was a science major in college. And so the information that I gave them was the eyes and ears, which way to turn the plant, which way to adjust the valves, and whether we were going to meet DEQ, EPA standards or not. And it would turn out to be a lot of fun. Everybody worked together on it. But once I matriculated out of that, after 30 years, I took some classes in watercolor. And I've been listening here, and I'm just going to make a short little statement, which I believe is true. And that is that if you're dealing with watercolors, they take pigment and they mix it with gum arabic, and then it's miscible with water. You can dilute it out to nothing if you want to. But the thing about watercolors is you can always rehydrate it. You can take an old painting and change it. Sometimes the pigment's not fugitive, so it's pretty hard to move it around. And so I started off with watercolors, which I thought would be easy, and that's actually the harder one to do. And I didn't become disappointed, but then I graduated to acrylics. And acrylics are basically an aqueous polymer. It's a pigment with polymer. And polymer means that they form long chains. And that's why you can put it on your house, and once it polymerizes, water will not rehydrate it. And it can peel and crack and everything else, as you well know, but it will not rehydrate. It dries fast. It's opaque, so you can put it one over another. That's real nice about it. And then I moved on to, I moved around more in art than I did in my career. I went on to oils. And my mother used to teach oils. Strangely enough, I knew she had brushes and I knew she did classes. The twain never met. My mother and I had slight differences of opinion. And I like to say that we had at least one thing in common. We both wanted to run my life. And I think I won. But at any rate, oils, I love the fact that you can move it around and you'll eventually get that color, maybe. The trouble is you don't know when to stop. So it's like making a cake, when do you stop stirring it and put it in the oven? So ultimately I did end up taking a class from a teacher here in Oregon City. In fact, I was with this group. There was no official name for it, but there were 7 of us. And all of us were, I would say that similar quality of work. And I worked with them for some time. But I liked the idea of colored pencil because I like to work with detail. I don't know if that shows or not, but the whole idea is with a pencil, you can get very specific, make very specific mark. And I've seen people do this with acrylics and oils too. I've seen really fancy paintings all over Europe. Some of the experts can do amazing, amazing work. But this is true of anything, any craft that you decide to put your heart into and some effort into and time, you will be able to do better and better and better just with experience. So what I'm going to talk about today is my limited experience and some of the techniques that you need to do colored pencil. And the first thing, just for no other reason, the first is paper. And the paper is, it's basically cotton. It's a high cotton content. It has a nap to it. You can hardly feel it, but it's not smooth like National Geographic paper. It's very absorbent because it's cotton. It's pretty tough. You can kind of beat it up a little bit and erase it. And you do that as part of your technique is to erase, put something on, take something off. And so I'll pass this around and you'll say, it's a piece of paper. This is called Stonehenge. There's several of them that you can use. And it has, like I said, it has a fairly high cotton content. Unless you take an electric eraser and really get in there and start putting too much friction on it, it won't rip up. You can rip a hole through paper. And I'm sure that this has happened with people using watercolors too. The tools that we're going to talk about today is how do you put this material on? It's pigment and wax, and the similarity that it has to pastels is that it's stable. That is, you can put your colored pencils away and they might melt in the bottom if they got too hot enough in the building. But it's already stabilized. It doesn't need to dry, it doesn't need to polymerize, and in oils it doesn't need to oxidize. That's why it takes 2 weeks. It's got to oxidize. All chemical, perfectly good chemical processes. Anyway, on the marking tools, and I'm going to show you just a few of them, you need a good quality pencil that's smooth in application, rich in saturation, and dissolves readily in solvent. Not everybody uses solvent. I am a convert. And some of the examples are, and there's quite a few. I don't sell any colored pencil or say that you can't make it with another brand. This is Prismacolor. It's one of the more common ones that you can get. This is 72. So there's 3 different banks of pencils in here. And there's probably 80 to 90% of all the pencils that you'd ever need are in 72. And there's about 150 altogether. Some, like silver and bronze and all that kind of stuff. Some of the others, some people, I had some colleagues that swore by Lyra, and it's a good pencil. I don't swear at it. Lyra has a little different format. Some people say the colors are smoother, and you won't find all the same colors in them. Some of them tend toward the earth tones, some of them tend toward the pastels. And I got this as a gift. Somebody didn't know what they were giving me. These are usually around $150.
Carl, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you prefer blending your colors with 2 different pens, or do you like the color out?
I try to get one color because you can do that, and sometimes you will have to because there just aren't all the colors in the world. If you use 2 different colors, you have to be careful about which one goes down first, because the one that goes down first on the paper is the one that's going to have the greatest impact. So if you put blue and then yellow, it's going to give you a green, right? If you do it the other way around, it'll be a different green. Okay, now this is Derwent. This is an English brand. Their pencils are really pretty. They don't fit in pencil sharpeners, so you have to do it manually or get a special pencil sharpener. But they've got some colors I like, so I keep them around for show and tell. I guess that's about it. There's a couple of Faber-Castell makes one, really has some really interesting colors. There's a couple of them I just gotta have, so they're added on. So I mix and match, and I'm not religious about sticking with one brand or another. The other marking tools are Prismacolor art sticks, and an art stick is really nothing more than, I've got it out here. It is just the wax. There's no wood pencil on it at all. This is what they look like. And you say, well, what would you want that for? Well, I'm going to show you here in the demonstration, in that you can impress the paper. You can leave a mark that will be here for a long time. And if it's in the sky, you won't like it. I'm pretty sure you won't like it. There's a few of them here. I can see this piece of paper, even though I was careful with it, has some little lines in it and so forth. But you can put this on without impressing, and that's what this is here. This is an art stick. And I have just gone over it somewhat, and the whole idea is that I can cover this in a very short order. Whereas a colored pencil, like this one, takes a little bit longer, and it has more white and so forth in between, in this case yellow. And then the last one is Neocolor. Neocolor is a French crayon, and it has high saturation. And I finally got sick and tired. I had some small sets, and I didn't do everything that I wanted to. So this set's $160, which seems like a lot for crayons.
Yeah.
Let me see here. This has got to come out. So $160, that's what that gets you.
Are those water soluble?
These are Neocolor 2, which means it is in fact water soluble. Neocolor 1 is a regular crayon. Sometimes that's okay. Solvent will smooth any of them out. But I just for the heck of it, I get Neocolor 2. So I want to show you here fairly soon exactly where you would use one or the other. And I did also have, I brought a little art. You don't have to buy $200 worth. You can get a small set that has most of the colors, and I'm using it primarily for skies and for water and stuff like that. So this is, basically I used this for 12 years, 10, 12 years. And it works.
So Karl, is that material the same as inside the?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's Neocolor. It's Prismacolor art sticks. Art sticks just means it's instead of a little tiny round piece inside of inset cedar, it's just,
Use bigger piece.
yeah.
But it has the same feel as that, or?
Absolutely, it's,
Doesn't feel like chalk or?
no, no. Okay, before I go to the demo, I wanted to touch on one of the things that you will notice here, or maybe you don't notice, is that I'm using solvent. I'm using solvent to deposit the pigment into the nap of the paper and remove the wax. And well, what do you want to do that for? Well, if you take a look over here, this is a pigment or wax that's been applied. And you can see the nap of the paper, and it's not even. You wouldn't be happy with the sky if you did this. It wouldn't work. I shouldn't be happy with it. And the same is true, this is a pencil, and I've taken a dull or a sharp pencil and heeled it way over, and just put it on without leaving marks. You don't want marks in your sky, I don't think, unless you've got something in mind. And the last one is Neocolor. And I'm going to treat all of them with Gamsol. One of the advantages of treating with Gamsol is that it will drive the pigment in and migrate it around so that it looks more like these things, your flowers and so forth. Plus, by removing the wax, you can turn right around and put more wax on it. If you shined your shoes black and then you decided you want to paint it a dead daisy on there, and you use some brown wax, it wouldn't even go on your shoe because it's It's already got wax on it. When you use the solvent, it removes the wax, pushes the paper in, and makes it homogeneous. And you'll see that as soon as I treat it. And I got a few other nifty little tools that you should have. This is just a battery-powered pencil sharpener, big deal. But wax is not as tough as graphite. And if you try to put it in one of these that you turn this way or whatever, you're probably gonna break a lot more wax and have it go into the hopper than you'll ever use. So these will sharpen things very tight, very quickly, and there's a lot of times you do need a sharp pencil. And the second thing, and I was in a store one day, and not one of my friends, but somebody came, I don't have very many friends, but anyway, she went into the store and she says, "Do you have an electric pencil eraser?" He says, "Why no?" She walked out and he said, I was waiting to be next, and he says, "Can you believe that some people are so lazy they can't even erase their own stuff?" And I said, "Well," I said, "for your edification, sir, this little tool here, which is just a battery-powered eraser, will remove wax, whereas if you tried to take one of these and erase it out, it's going to make the biggest mess you've ever seen, because that wax is not going to lift up because you have a rubber eraser. This thing turns fast enough that it'll just peel it right off. And I'll show you where we need this in a couple of situations. The other thing, and it's the curse of every art medium has its weak points. I don't know about weak, but it causes problems. You need to have a brush to remove all the pieces. While you're doing this, and I almost always work horizontal, just like Barb does with their watercolors, is pieces will fall off. And when you're putting in some black or dark blue, sure enough, little pieces will end up all over here. And it really ruins the effect. So when you're working on something, you're continually brushing stuff away, and if you're smart, you don't brush it toward the white. You just push it off of the paper. And that's kind of necessary. And in fact, you can see a little bit of color on here. You can use Gamsol and then on a towel, and it will come right out of there. So let's go ahead and do this demo. I have some Gamsol. Is made by Gambian or whatever. It's a local outfit. Basically, it's called OMS, which is odorless mineral spirits, meaning it has no smell. Only people who have imagination can smell it. In other words, it has a very low volatility, not like solvent or turpentine. A turpentine, you open one up, and pretty soon everyone is sampling those molecules. You don't smell this. Well, the other good thing about it is you use it on a painting in a certain area, and you say, well, it's still not good enough. You can come back with wax, you can come back with many other tools and still work with it. And it'll stay there, and it'll probably be the next day before it's totally gone. Not a problem. So I use several different tools. Well, in the first set here, I'm going to use this microfiber. And these are really good for cleaning your glasses and everything. So what I do is I put some in here. I'm just going to make a very small, I'm not putting a lot on there. If you put a lot on there, it will remove all of it, just like using gasoline to wipe off engine oil off of your car. So I twist it like this, and now there's a damp spot there. I'm just going to use my finger. I'm a chemist, I'm not worried about this as a chemical. I don't need to have gloves. But if you feel like you need it, you do it. The nap is the nap, which is the valley. The valley is being covered with the pigment. And if I decided that this wasn't enough, I'd say, well, wait a minute, there's a little bit, right? I don't want those lines in the sky.
Karl, does it dry instantly?
No. It'll be that tomorrow I can go back and put more of the same color on this if I wanted to, come back and re-gamsol it, and if it isn't really moving like I want it to, I put a little more solvent on it. So if you're using a small amount like I am, it's not going to be a problem. And this is not good enough, but this is the first attempt. We're talking a minute to do that. So this is what the difference between what it was before when it had the map showing, and here is a pencil. A lot of times you've only got, I don't know, maybe 85 colors there, whereas you have 150 in the whole set of Gamsol. So you may have to use pencils. And this is Naples ochre and light cadmium yellow. And so I'm going to start with the cadmium. If I start up here, it might change us some. And that might be what you want to do. That's what this is all about. See how immediately that has a lot more intensity? It's what we call saturation. If you tried to mark in here with something else and then did this, you better be doing a cloud because it's going to smear that all over 7 creations. I have before decided that I didn't want a color somewhere. And so what I do is I put on 2 to 3 times as much solvent as I just showed you. And then I come back and I basically solvate that pigment and wax to oblivion, and it ends up here in this inexpensive. Now these are now, it used to be you'd have to buy them specially. But now they sell them to mechanics by the 50. So they're not expensive at all. But nothing works quite like this. It has a special, I mean, I've been wearing these glasses for only 2 years, seems like longer. But it really polishes your glasses. They don't scratch it. I used to, by the time I was ready to get new glasses, they looked like they were looking through a fog lens or something. This does not, unless you get dirt in there. If you get a lot of dirt in there, you don't wipe your shoes and then do your glasses. Okay, now the next one is Neocolor. It is water soluble. Didn't taste that bad. It used to be that pigment, if you were doing like pastels or something like that, they used to use metals a lot of times to get these colors. And if you have bits of them coming off like you would with a pastel, you would have to be careful to make sure that it didn't end up breathing them in, if it's cadmium or something like that. Nowadays, almost everything is synthetic. Better living through chemistry. Oh, I'm sorry, that saying's gone by the boards, but it's still true. So those things are not nearly the problem that they were. I added a little bit more solvent there because this was drying out or something. And I can even go up here. You can start mixing them so you can blend your own colors. See where there's some concentrations of pigment. The Neocolor has an awful lot of saturation value in it. Okay, the last one is the same as the first one, except it was a lighter color. And before I did it, I drew in a couple clouds in there. You will not probably be very, you might get lucky, but if you put down blue and then you decide you want a white cloud in there, not going to work too good. But the first color on the paper gets precedence. Okay, maybe this is not the color you want. You can add other colors, you could come back with more blue, do whatever you want. But in this case, find it. I'm going to use, the one that I use more than anything else is white Neil color. I come back, and obviously there's something wrong with this cloud, it's been sick or something. And because the white is there, I can add a little bit and make it more cloud-like. This is not, I would never give a class on how to make clouds because I don't know how to do it. But first you put some uprising colors in it, and you can kind of set, you would be marking over the blue, but it won't work, it won't hurt it too bad. But now that you've done that, and basically I would do a sky, and then I would come back and take like, I can now you would never get away with that with oil. Never. The brown is in there, and the tree that will stay brown. This might not be the right color. This happens to be Hooker's green, so it should be the right color, but maybe that is not really what the tree is supposed to be. It looks a little bit too together to be a tree. So what you would do then is go on to the next one, which I'll show you in a little more detail. And that is these inexpensive Q-tips. And using the cap of the, I am spilling a little bit on the floor here, but you don't need to don your gas mask yet. Obviously, this is not the most delicate tool in the toolkit. And say, well, okay, now it's too dang light. Still solvent in there, so I can go back. And if trees are your thing, and I like trees too. I'm actually a botanist, trained as a botanist. So I have no idea what the heck this tree is, an olive tree. And then just, you can see how much color I picked up. But I could just go softly on it. And if there's a bigger drawing, it might look a little more like a tree. Okay, and let's come down here, and a Q-tip is something you're going to use and throw away, lots of them. They're very cheap. They're not good for detailed drawings, but in my case, a lot of males have a tendency to think with their left brain, so they think very abstractly, and as you can see, these geometric shapes are a result thereof. With a Q-tip, you might get away with staying in the lines, like they told you in the first grade. You'll notice that it has less nap than down here. It also has removed some of the color, which is right here. So you can come back with lilac and reinforce that if you need to, but maybe that's the color you wanted in the first place. And there's still plenty left here. But the whole idea of the Q-tip is, if it's a fairly wide area, if it's half this width, you could probably get away with it. It's probably not going to work on that one. You're gonna, if this is the shape you're trying to maintain, you don't want to use that one. So I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. They have some pretty decent things up there compared to Michael's. Anyway, there was something like 100 or 50 or something like that. And it's a pretty sharp point. Dip it in solvent. It does look a lot different here. Till you get up closer, there's not much nap in the treated area.
What is that, Karl?
Pardon?
What is that?
This is a craft tip. I got this up at Hobby Lobby.
Craft.
Yeah, it's a bit finer than these. You know, you can't do everything with these. That is, if it's a small area or corner, up here in a corner, and you didn't want to get pigment over there, you'd use a craft tip on that. Okay, then, and there's another little product here, which is not absolutely necessary. Gambling, and it's called coal wax. I think Terry knows what this is. And it's beeswax and Gamsol mixed together. So you can use a Q-tip, you can use a finger like you're putting on cold cream, and it's not quite so harsh as Gamsol by itself. And it applies some wax on it too. Okay. However, before these other things came around, I went to my instructor and I said, "Look, I can't get what I want." He says, "Well, you might try this solvent." He says, "I don't feel good about it. It's toxic." Okay, yeah, all right, I'll take the chances. And that's when I ran across Gamsol. But this is called a blender pencil, and it looks just like wax because it's basically what it is. And you can put this on, and like I said, the nap is showing through. But you can add more wax, and like molecules dissolve like molecules, which is why gasoline dissolves oil marks and stains. This is a little more tedious than using Gamsol, so I had to look hard to find my blending pencils for this demo. I don't use it very much, but it will work. In this case, it's making what looks a little bit like veins in a leaf. Okay, and then the other thing you can do is, well, it's not dark enough, why don't you just add more color? You can do that, that's called burnishing. And burnishing can be the same color or a new color. So it's wax again, this is crimson red. And we're gonna burnish this triangle. I'm using approximately the same pressure I did the first time around. But now it's putting an excess of wax and pigment on this object. I don't do this very much either because you have to kind of fool around here to get that in there, which you can do with Gamsol. You've got more than one way of doing it, but maybe you did want to be more intense. Okay, the other thing you can do with using these different pigments is we've got Neocolor. Neocolor has more wax on it, so you can put Neocolor over other things that you want to be more intense. So here we have Neocolor and a felt tip. It's just like a felt pen that doesn't have any ink in it, but it's you can't even get them anymore, but they have a little felt tip that fits in there, and it's pretty tough. So this is Payne's Gray, has a little blue in it. It adds a lot to the picture, I think. I'll leave some of it undone. You get the idea. Whoops. Okay. Believe me, that happens. So, that isn't what I intended. This was going to be the royal crest, and I goofed it up a little. It's a dark color, so one advantage of working this way, even though it's awkward for me, is that your wax stuff falls off of here. And if you really had to, you could. If you have any questions, just holler out. My name's Karl. Okay, so now we're down to corrections. The nut behind the wheel wasn't paying attention and trying to watch TV, and you were trying to make a D, and you got carried away. So it won't totally go away.
So where did you get that electric?
A lot of people have these. Hobby Lobby has one too. This one is
I'm afraid all those kind of places.
Statler. Hobby Lobby has this one, which is a little more awkward, but I like it. It has, Hobby Lobby has this particular one, Curate is the name of it, and it comes with a really tiny eraser, or the same size eraser as that. There's a piece of steel in here, and you put that around the eraser so you can go from one side to the other with one sharpener. And they're about like $10, you know. I mean, it's a pretty good deal.
Karl, is it over by the pencil section?
Yeah. All right. And it comes in a little, this happens to be Derwent, but they have a little deal like this where it has different size erasers in it, and there's different kinds of tips. You could use this for a lot of different things. I don't know if they're very good for acrylic, but you can also come back in here. Presumably, you don't have much blank paper on a colored pencil piece of paper. That is, something will be in here, white or tan or you name it. What'll happen is, if you just start drawing things like this, and then when you go to coat it, and I coat it because wax and dust will stick to this somewhat. You put it up on the wall. If you have it behind glass, you're probably okay for a long time. If you don't, and I don't usually use glass. Now that one on the end down there is behind glass. For some reason I was using glass. But this is particularly hard to do, to get the reflection of his orange pants and the boat colors here, green and red and so forth. I had to study this for quite a while to realize that what you were seeing was on a certain side of the ripple is where the color was. In other words, it won't look right, and I looked at this one's going in the round file. Finally figured it out. One of the nice things about colored pencil, I'll just mention here in passing, this is of course the Oregon City Bridge. You can see the elevator and a lot of reflections down in here. These are particularly hard to do. You have to be very skilled to do this air plenum because the light will change. So these highlights here might not be there in the next 5 minutes. The other thing is, unless you're an architect, you have to appreciate everything is built with a plumb bob. All these buildings had better be this way and not like that, because even a child that can't even unwrap a sucker will notice that it isn't right. They will not have believability. So that's another reason why you would use pencils as well as follow from a photograph. This is a photograph of my front yard at the beach, and I just moved in really close, took the picture of the hydrangea, and then looked at this little picture, and it doesn't look too bad. But I went down and I blew this thing out, $13, $12.99 at Fred Meyer. You get it back in 15 minutes. I can now study the detail, the color, the shape of the leaves, and I know leaves, that's my major, but I'm not positive about all the venation, which adds a lot to the picture. This picture here, again, there are some errors in this one building here apparently has had a slight earthquake. It's tilting a little bit that way, and some of these windows are not perfectly where they should be, not exactly, and that's what makes a painting a painting. This is Cadiz in southwestern Spain, near Gibraltar, and like I was saying earlier, we happen to be there. It's on a peninsula, so this is the Atlantic Ocean here, and then over on that side is the biggest building in Cadiz, and it was the Crown Princess. That was the ship I was on. It was bigger than any building in the whole town on this little peninsula. It's 1,100 years old, and each of these here are older than in the United States. And then it just rained, and we ducked into a McDonald's and had something decent to eat that didn't give us Montezuma's revenge. And then we came out and the sun was out, so we took some pictures. And this city, Cadiz, was established by the Phoenicians, and they moved from the Holy Lands throughout the Mediterranean, the Big Sea, all the way out to Gibraltar and Cadiz. And then eventually they were allied to Carthage. Carthage took a nosedive when they were fighting with Rome. This is on the Columbia River Gorge. It's Lateral Falls. And this bridge structure here, which I found very interesting, along with the trees and the shading and everything else. My instructor at the time says, well, you aren't going to put that fence in there, are you? And I said, well, why wouldn't I? If there was a fly here, I would draw that because it's interesting. I know some things I have left out. So anyway, we'll finish up here. Oh, okay. Now we are, I took, outlined this and then I put white in here. And this is kind of what you end up with when you're trying to do white. You've got to put that white on first. If you allow the debris to get on the paper, you might have trouble getting it off the paper. So you put white on it, knowing full well that it's going to become contaminated with every little bit of junk that comes off of here. And almost any painting that you do, in my opinion, and I think some people who know more about it than I do, which is a lot of people, tell you that you've got to have dark colors and light colors, light and dark, and we need to get your interest. Unfortunately, it also means you're going to have black coming off because you're going to have to go down and do something like this. And so what you do is take this here, and usually I have to clean the eraser. Eventually it's just,
Now you got a mark on your jeans.
I know, I throw them away. And I could use my solvent to get out. It'll remove that. Okay, and I didn't clean that up very good. You can also, if you don't want to walk around with white spots on your clothes, just use your microfiber. But then, you're doing white, get a new one. Don't do it because you had green, purple, or black on it. You'll be sorry. You'll go backwards. You spread it out a little bit so it's not staying obvious. And you can see it's been picked up a little bit. Try not to get into that blue. It would probably cause more problems than some other artificial contamination. Okay, and then ideally you let it, we have a cup of coffee, and come back in with white, and it will mate with that other white that's in there. And what looked like a permanent goof up is not so bad you have to ditch your painting. And if you wait a little bit for that Gamsol to evaporate, it would work even better. All right. Okay, the next one I'm not going to do anything to, but you can tell by looking at some of the others here, this is the nap that's showing through with just a colored pencil. If you're not using a blending pencil or cold wax or burnishing. This last one here is just, there is some cream here, and I have taken a scriber, which is nothing more than a ball on a marking stick.
Oh, yes.
And what I did is I marked this, then I put some cream in it. But if, I thought this is kind of a clever thing. If I can find the brown. Well, hey, that's red.
The brown is right down here, right in front,
Here?
over back one. Isn't it?
I don't know, this is walnut brown.
Yeah.
Very good eye. Okay, I have scribed these and I made this Tuscan red, but you can't do this afterwards. Will not work. But if this was a field, so it might have been, it might be green and the reed or the straw, whatever. So this allows you to put some interest in the front of your painting. And
Use it for pet whiskers.
it could be that, yeah, sure. And then on this one, I think I had somewhere I had a gray. Not gray, this is blue slate. You could have this rope going across your sky. Okay. Well, those are the basic things that you can apply to your painting. And next I want to cover quickly. How do you get, every painting that I have here, I have a photograph that's the same size. So I can if I wanted to get really carried away, I can use a micrometer or just a ruler and determine that I had everything is in the right size and the right proportion, because obviously the further away, the smaller it'd be, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. If you get an enlargement, you're going to be able to see detail. You're going to be able to get the color just the way you want it. If you have a really small thing, if you ever taken home a swatch of color from Home Depot or something like that, and you put that out and say, hey, that looks pretty good. So then you order it and you put it out and say, I hate it. In a mass, it looks different than a little tiny one. You're gonna have less problems if you have something that's large and you can determine what the heck is that color. So how do you do that? Well, you do what's called a color swatch. And does it have to be this shape? It should be. If you notice that the colors go right to the very edge, so that, I don't remember, I don't think this is any of the ones that I've done here, but you could bring that color, and it's pretty intense. It might even been Gamsol. Is that the right color? There? Maybe? Because what's going to happen, you've done this work, you've taken your picture, you got your enlargement, you've decided what color, and you wrote down here where you want to use it, and then you go have lunch or you go and do something else, you come back and say, what was that color? It was only 150, well, start over. So, if you have it written down here, and it says the underside of blue, the base coat, the button, the shadow, blah, blah, blah. It's all written down. Generally, once I've discovered what I want here, and there'd be some that would be failures that aren't right here, I would set those out or put them in a box. Okay, that's for that painting. I'll use those there. And hopefully you'll make less errors that way. So you enlarge a painting to see the detail, to more accurately represent shape and shading, and to correctly match the color swatch. How do you do that? How many of you do this? How many of you? Okay, Sarah, good. All that you have to do, here's one way of doing it. Take your iPhone or your camera disc, whatever, and go to a store. The one that I'm aware of is the Oregon City Fred Meyer Photo Department. They have a portrait printer. Nobody's ever using it. Takes maybe 15 minutes. I'll get 2 big pictures like this. Cost me $25. Hopefully I'll be able to recreate that picture, that scene, and make it look nice. You go into the computer, plug it in, say you want a poster, select the size, make the adjustments, remove the red eye, beef up the blue. If you're Terry, beef up the purple. Whatever you like. And if you don't like it, start over. And then you just punch in there and tell them, and then I usually walk over and get some groceries, and by the time I come back, here they are. Put them in my grocery cart, take them up to my studio. So, if you're going to do a drawing, you have at least 3 different ways of doing it. One is to sketch it from life, from a photo, or from your imagination. That's what most people do at some point in their career. The second thing is to use proportional squares. I don't know if any of you use that. I won't belabor the point very much, but you can get all the detail by getting a grid art. I've done some of this before. I did it quite a little bit when I was in high school in a biology class. I did the Java brain and Cro-Magnon brain, whatever. But basically, you have to, it's a little more tedious. It's a little less accurate than tracing. You draw squares in the landscape or portrait, and this one happens to be an 8 by 10. So if you're doing an 8 by 10 picture, piece of decent paper. And then for this particular case, I have a small photograph that I like the composition, or at least that's my story. And these come with like 15 different sizes. This is size 3. It's got little squares on it. And you place it over the picture and decide where you want to be. And they're all 8 by 10. So if you're going to do, you can do this same thing with an even larger picture. So that 8 by 10 it could be a 16 by 20, which these are. So then all that you do is you start with each one here and you draw each picture individually, or at least the outline, so that the whole picture hangs together. It takes a while to do that. But if you're going to have nightmares because you traced it, then this is what you can do. If you're going to trace it, then you need to transfer the image and get it, you have to mark the salient points on an acetate sheet attached to the photo and use an ultrafine Sharpie. So, let's see here. Okay. Let's see, this is have a photo. No, this does not have a photo on it. You may not be able to make this out. I'll show you the photo. Here's the photo. This is the top of the ball court in Yucatan, Mexico. It's a Mayan ruin, and the rattlesnake was something that caused instant death. But as you remember, the ball court, which is down into a hole over here, and there's a little bit of I like that. It's got a little bit of character. All that I did here is up at Hobby Lobby, you can get these little sheets, these transparent sheets, and you can put your photograph in there to keep it pristine. I've also found that when you lock it down and then mark it with a Sharpie, then you can now cut off the edge of it and use it so you don't have to buy Mylar that big.
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes. Yes, we'll be done. So then, once you've got it copied, and that's what we've got here, it's on a piece of Sorel. And then the Sorel, I happen to have the carbon paper turned around so I don't make a mess of it. It's just a piece of Stonehenge on a piece of masonite. And you can get at least 6 out of a sheet of paper, sheet of 4x8, and more like 10. So anyway, now you go over this again. You're going to get a good idea what these shapes are, and it will not be the same as a picture, guaranteed. So then you transfer that over, erase some of the charcoal, and then draw your picture.
Sky's so blue.
Okay, I'll show you just a couple more, and then wrap this up. Most of you have seen this one. This is a rooster from Tahiti. The challenging thing there was the rocks, not the rooster. See this one. This is from Portugal. Lisbon, as a matter of fact. And then I have 2 more I'm going to show you real quickly that are not any you have seen. There's a guy named David Roberts. He lived 170 years ago. He was considered the biggest guru in Great Britain. And he drew these pictures from Cairo 170 years ago. And I have basically just copied them. So obviously I can't sell them, but just to learn how to do, I think there's 42 pictures, 42 people in this particular. But they like to hang rags here to keep the sun out. But this happens to be a copper market, I think it is. No, that one is. That's what they got these darn pans and everything. And it could very well drive me crazy to get these colors in here and get the angles just right. But that would be exceedingly difficult to do if you were going to try to do it by sketching it. So the last thing I'm going to show you It's another architectural thing. This is Neuschwanstein, southern Bavaria. Mad King Ludwig built this in 1850 approximately. When we had artillery and could have blown this thing off this perch. It was never lived in. He was kind of a hermit, solitary person. But I've been up there a dozen times because I lived near where the post. I was in one of Hitler's officers' barracks. I was a military policeman in charge of security. And we went up here many times in the snow and blah, blah, blah. This would be tough to do by sketching. Other people can do it. This one, however, I think would drive them nuttier and it'd have less hair than I've got. This is the Crown Princess in Moriete in Tahiti last year. On our third trip down there, the weather was beautiful. But to try to get these lines straight and all these little doodads and dots and the whole texture in here, this would be a monumental. I will do it. I'll bring it when I'm done. And this is one of the things that, the reason why I'm really fond of colored pencil. Any question? No. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did I hear you say that you do a coating after the picture's done?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the process there?
It's just an acrylic coating of paint. And what you need to do is you set it down, of course not in a frame, and then you go over it maybe one way this way and then one way that way. Yeah, it's a spray. It's just an acrylic spray. You want to use satin. Satin's better, I believe, than gloss. Now, there might be some subjects where gloss would be better. But then you let it dry, probably overnight, and then come back and do it again until finally you get a decent coat on there. You can see there is kind of a coat, but it's a matte or satin. So now that if your house is free of dust, you're one of the few people, but you can wash this. You could actually use cloth on it. I wouldn't recommend a lot of heat, but it won't smear, and it's sealed from any oxygen on the outside, any oxygen getting to it. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's give Karl a round of applause. Now, how many would want to take his workshop again? It would be like in October or November.